Before empire and independence, there was a 5,000-year civilization.
From Harappa's perfect drains to ISRO's Mars orbiters, how did one persistent, complex idea called India endure and, well, relentlessly innovate?
Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is a high-tempo analytical journey through 5 millennia of civilizational history. We are focused on extracting the core insights from your source material, celebrating the continuity, the revolutionary innovation, and the deep pragmatic pluralism that underpins modern nationhood.
Exactly. We're tracking the enduring through line of this story. We want to show how resilience and adaptability manifest across eras, from Bronze Age urban planning right up to 21st century digital public infrastructure. This dive is about identifying those unique cultural and intellectual engines that kept the civilization running.
Okay, let's start right at the beginning, the foundational level. The Indus Valley Civilization, or IVC. These cities, particularly Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, weren't just settlements. They represent, well, probably the most logistically sophisticated Bronze Age civilization we know of.
That sophistication is absolutely key. We're talking about uniformity that stretches across hundreds, maybe thousands of miles, standardized building bricks, specific weights and measures, streets laid out on a precise grid system, often designed to catch prevailing winds, and maybe most famously, advanced public and private drainage systems.
Right, that uniformity, those standardized brick sizes across such a vast territory, that implies a massive centralized logistical operation, doesn't it? Centuries before formal empires. What does that tell us about the earliest form of Indian statecraft?
Well, it suggests an extremely powerful, maybe not militaristic in the way we usually think, but a powerful form of governance, focused entirely on civil engineering and commerce. You just don't get that level of standardization and coordinated public works like those huge public baths without some kind of central authority. An authority controlling resource extraction, labor organization, technical oversight. It's a powerful precedent, really, for later highly centralized state models like the Mauryan Empire.
Okay. So the IVC culture eventually faded, starting around, 1700 BCE. The debate over its decline, climate change, tectonic shifts, migration, it's still debated, right? But how does modern scholarship view the subsequent era and the question of peoples?
Yeah, the thinking has definitely shifted. Modern scholarship increasingly favors models of synthesis and continuity over simple, clean breaks. It's not so binary anymore. The subsequent Vedic age associated with the Indo-Aryans certainly brought Sanskrit, a powerful, organized language that became a tool for really sophisticated thought, and the Vedas, especially the Rig Veda.
And these texts formed the philosophical and spiritual backbone of what we now call Hinduism. It's during this time that the social structure began to define itself around the concept of varnas, those idealized occupational divisions: priest, warrior, merchant, laborer.
Exactly. But it's crucial to note the distinction here. The Varna system, as described in the text, was initially defined more by occupation and maybe spiritual quality, but over centuries, this ideal model rigidified and localized into the incredibly complex birth-based jati. Understanding that shift from a more flexible ideal to localized rigidity is really vital to grasping later social dynamics.
Okay, so this is where the civilization shifts, you could say, from ritual mastery towards intellectual mastery. That philosophical turn in the late Vedic age gave rise to the Upanishads. This isn't just religious doctrine, is it? It's a deep dive into metaphysics.
It really is. It's a moment of profound introspection. The Upanishads introduced the core concepts that pretty much define classical Indian thought. Things like karma, action and consequence, dharma, duty, and righteous conduct, and the ultimate goal of moksha, or liberation, through realizing the unity of the individual soul, Atman, and the universal spirit, Brahman. Heavy stuff.
And those profound, sometimes abstract philosophical truths were spread and popularized through the great narrative traditions, right? The epics. You have the Ramayana and the absolutely massive Mahabharata, which of course contains the Bhagavad Gita. These epics function almost like a portable moral and cultural encyclopedia.
They absolutely do. They blend history, myth, philosophy, providing a shared cultural grammar about duty, statecraft, morality. And it's constantly reinterpreted across languages and regions.
Right.
That shared narrative infrastructure. It's a massive factor in civilizational continuity. Huge.
But the export wasn't just philosophy. It was hard science and mathematics that fundamentally changed the world. Let's talk numbers. Specifically, the conceptualization of zero as a number, the decimal system, and the whole concept of place value.
Right. The development of place value and zero. The idea of an absence having mathematical meaning. That was a computational revolution. It sounds simple now, but it was huge. It allowed for complex calculations that were just impossible in earlier systems. This directly enabled figures like Bhaskara to solve quadratic and cubic algebraic equations centuries ago, using methods that were only later popularized in Europe.
And Aryabhata, the 5th century genius, his achievements are, well, astounding, especially in astronomy.
He was a true scientific revolutionary. He calculated the value of pi remarkably accurately, 3.1416. But maybe more importantly, he theorized that the Earth is a sphere rotating on its own axis. That's a concept generally accepted only much, much later in the early modern West. He also provided the scientific explanation for solar and lunar eclipses, proving they were celestial mechanics, not, the work of some demon swallowing the sun or moon, challenging the prevailing dogma of his time. That took guts.
That intellectual courage is immense. And this innovation wasn't limited to the stars or numbers. Sushruta is recognized as the father of surgery. What made his medical contributions so pioneering?
His systematic approach, really. In the Sushruta Samhita, he meticulously described over 1,100 diseases, hundreds of medicinal plants, like 760 of them. And he was known for complex plastic surgery, notably rhinoplasty, reconstructing noses, and even cataract operations.
Wow. Rhinoplasty, cataracts.
Yeah. That capacity for practical, applied knowledge, paired with Charaka's pioneering of Ayurveda, and let's not forget Patini's incredibly sophisticated recursive grammar structure for Sanskrit. It shows a civilization obsessed with internal logic, with systematization. It's quite remarkable.
So, okay, we have this foundational knowledge structure, philosophical, mathematical, scientific, linguistic. How did that translate into strategic political power and imperial administration? We move from the late Vedic age to the rise of the Mahajanapadas, the great kingdoms, and the eventual dominance of Magadha.
That transition is crucial because the knowledge wasn't just academic. It was strategic. It underpinned statecraft. It culminated in the Mauryan Empire, the first large, centralized pan-Indian state founded by Chandragupta Maurya. And the power behind the throne, of course, was Chanakya or Kautilya.
Right, and the Arthashastra attributed to Chanakya, it's not exactly a feel-good moral document, is it? It's a treatise on brutally pragmatic statecraft. It codified everything: administration, commerce, war, advanced espionage, using economic power to control rivals.
Yep.
It's all in there.
It's the ultimate guide to centralized efficiency and, well, realpolitik. This centralized base allowed Chandragupta to make large strategic moves, like cementing a peace alliance with Seleucus, one of Alexander's successors, by gifting 500 war elephants, using military assets as diplomatic currency on a grand scale. But the empire's lasting legacy, arguably, comes from his grandson, Ashoka.
Ashoka. The quintessential example of profound political remorse changing the entire direction of state policy. After the incredibly bloody Kalinga War, he was apparently filled with deep regret. He publicly apologized, essentially, and pivoted entirely.
His pivot was dramatic. A shift to Dharma moral governance, religious tolerance, ethical rule. He didn't just talk about it. He used the immense wealth and organization of the Mauryan state. He funded widespread welfare projects, planting shade trees along roads, establishing hospitals, digging wells and watering places along trade routes. Real practical stuff. And this system also allowed him to send Buddhist missions globally. Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, maybe even further, ensuring the tradition flourished beyond India.
Okay, so post-Mauryan decline, we enter the Gupta Empire period, often called the Golden Age. Maybe smaller geographically, but it really defined classical flourishing, didn't it?
It did. It saw the zenith of Sanskrit literature figures like Kalidasa and further leaps in math and astronomy built on earlier foundations. But for sheer engineering prowess, you have to mention the famous Delhi Iron Pillar, a metallurgy feat that remains virtually rust-free after over 1,600 years. It just shows an incredible command over iron processing.
Amazing. But historical focus often centers on the north. We absolutely need to look south, to the phenomenal resilience and continuity of the Tamil kingdoms. Our sources make an incredible claim about the Pandyan kingdom. What's that?
Yeah, the claim is pretty staggering, that the Pandyan kingdom rules for 2,000 continuous years, arguably the longest reigning continuous dynasty in world history. We have evidence from consistent Sangam-era literature and later inscriptions, even as their capitals shifted places like Madurai and Korkai. That level of institutional continuity is almost unheard of.
2,000 years. Incredible. And then the Cholas defined maritime supremacy in a big way. How extensive was their naval power, their thalassocracy, under rulers like Rajarajan and Rajendra Chola?
It was truly international. The Cholas didn't just control the eastern coast of India, they pioneered naval warfare, using high-quality teak and rosewood trade ships for military purposes. They adapted their merchant fleet. But the most incredible detail is probably Rajendra Chola's 125 CE naval expedition, a 2,300-kilometer maritime blitzkrieg against the Srivijaya Empire, which controlled the Malacca Strait.
Wow, that's a massive projection of power, designed to control the vital trade choke points linking India to China, right?
Precisely. It was a sophisticated, strategic effort to maintain economic control over the Indian Ocean trade network, and left a lasting cultural influence. You can see it in temples and poetry across Southeast Asia. These empires were fundamentally maritime, sustained by trade.
And speaking of trade, we have to look at the backbone of this economic resilience. The merchant guilds, these weren't just traders, they were financiers, maybe even kingmakers.
Absolutely. They were economic engines. These guilds were highly organized, often non-hereditary, and frequently elected their leadership. This structural flexibility meant they often survived dynastic upheaval, unlike some of the empires they financed. They were incredibly resilient. They provided crucial services like war loans. There are stories they even reputedly financed Chandragupta Maurya's rise. And they maintained vital public infrastructure, like baths or roads. They had enormous influence, often independent of political rulers.
Okay, so as we move into the medieval era, this theme of synthesis becomes almost the default setting, doesn't it? We see the blending of cultures Achaemenid and Greek contact, leading to that unique Greco-Buddhist Gandhara art style, and later the arrival of the Delhi Sultanate bringing new influences.
Right. The Sultanate introduced new styles of urbanism, Persianate culture, and created that iconic Indo-Islamic architecture. The Qutb Minar is a prime example. Crucially, this era also spurred profound theological dialogue. The Bhakti movement, emphasizing personal devotion and often critiquing the rigidities of caste, found common ground and had conversations with Sufi mystical traditions. This interaction fostered a widespread culture of tolerance in many areas.
And this capacity for pluralism wasn't just philosophical, it was a military and administrative strength too, famously demonstrated by the Vijayanagar Empire in the south.
That's a great example. Vijayanagar was founded initially, yes, as a Hindu bulwark against northern sultanates. Yet it survived and thrived precisely because it pragmatically incorporated Muslims into its highest administrative and military ranks. They understood that state strength lay in utilizing competence, regardless of faith, especially to fight rivals effectively. Hampi, its capital, became a truly massive global megacity. Sources suggest it was second only to Beijing in size during its height, a cosmopolitan hub.
Then you have the Mughals, reaching their cultural zenith under Akbar. He's known for administrative efficiency, the Mansabdari system, and a concerted effort to transcend religious divisions, like his experiments with Din Ilahi.
It was definitely a period of incredible artistic, architectural, and administrative achievement, but the seeds of fragmentation were sown later. Aurangzeb's reversal of Akbar's tolerance policies and his prolonged, incredibly costly campaigns in the Deccan. They drained the imperial treasury, and that directly led to the rise of powerful, independent regional powers, the Marathas, the Sikhs, the Jats, various Rajput states reasserting themselves. It set the stage for a whole new political dynamic.
Before the colonial story really takes hold, and we'll cover that in more detail elsewhere, we must contextualize India's global presence. How interconnected was the subcontinent with the rest of the world before, say, 1700?
Oh, massively interconnected. The Indian Ocean trade was, for centuries, the global economic engine. We have Roman records suggesting, maybe 150 Indian ships a year were trading directly with the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago. Indian ships, mind you, as Romans weren't huge fans of seafaring. India exported spices, textiles, beads, the famous high-quality steel. Its position was pivotal. They mastered monsoon navigation, establishing long-standing diasporas from Southeast Asia all the way to East Africa.
And the term Indianization of Southeast Asia, it's really important to clarify that this wasn't military conquest, right?
Absolutely not. It was fundamentally cultural exchange. Indian scripts, the epics like the Ramayana and Mahabharata, ideas about statecraft and kingship, they traveled and were actively adopted and adapted locally. Rulers in places like modern Cambodia, Thailand, Indonesia sought to enhance their own prestige and legitimacy by incorporating these elements. It was a process of borrowing and deep adaptation, not imposition. You still see the legacy today.
Right.
Okay, now, briefly, the arrival of Europeans. Our sources note they began as relatively minor coastal traders.
Yeah.
When did that power dynamic fundamentally shift?
Well, the Portuguese, Dutch, French, English. They started as trading partners, mostly constrained to small coastal enclaves, often needing permission from powerful Indian states like the Mughals or Vijayanagar. For instance, the Vijayanagar Empire actually helped Portugal take Goa from the Bijapur Sultanate, seeing it as tactically useful. The real shift in power accelerated significantly, not just through, say, better ships or cannons initially, but with the massive economic and technological edge provided by the European Industrial Revolution, which happened much later. That changed the game entirely.
That context is vital. Okay, fast forwarding. The watershed moment leading towards independence was arguably the 1857 revolt, seen by many as the first war of Indian independence. It really exposed the East India Company's fragility and, importantly, unified many disparate regional grievances under a common cause, even if briefly. Exactly. And the mass political struggle that followed was fundamentally redefined by Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy of satyagraha, active truth force, and ahimsa, nonviolence. Movements like the Salt March, the Quit India movement, they mobilized millions. But the leadership was diverse, a whole spectrum.
Yes, absolutely. You had the militant nationalism of someone like Subhash Chandra Bose and the Indian National Army fighting alongside the British enemies in WWII, balanced by constitutionalists like Nehru and Patel working within political structures, and the tireless social reformer B.R. Ambedkar, who became the principal architect of the Constitution. And so many women leaders, too.
Ambedkar's influence was crucial, especially in shaping the vision for the new republic. Despite the profound trauma of 1947 independence and partition of violence, the displacement India moved swiftly. They established the 1950 Constitution, enshrining a sovereign, democratic, secular republic committed, at least in principle, to social justice and the rights of marginalized communities.
And structurally, one of the most brilliant moves, perhaps, to ensure unity in that diverse nation was the linguistic reorganization of states in 1956.
It was absolutely crucial. By recognizing and accommodating major linguistic identities within the federal structure, it eased regional tensions. It didn't eliminate them, of course, but it provided a framework. It facilitated continental-scale democracy, managing complex elections, balancing federal power, a process that continues to manage incredible diversity and logistical challenges at a scale pretty much unseen anywhere else.
And independent India has demonstrated significant capacity ever since. From achieving food self-sufficiency through the Green Revolution to the pivotal 1991 economic reforms that opened up the economy, launched the IT boom, and turned cities like Bangalore and Hyderabad into global tech powerhouses.
Definitely. And that capacity for innovation continues today. You see it in ISRO's successful Mars orbiter mission, Mangalyaan, and the Chandrayaan lunar missions. World-class achievements on, relatively speaking, tight budgets. Plus the country's vast digital public infrastructure, the pharma sector. India maintains strategic autonomy on the world stage, giving it an increasingly significant voice, especially for the global south.
So let's bring it back to our starting question. After this whirlwind tour across millennia, what truly holds a billion-plus people together across dozens of major languages, countless scripts, multiple faiths? What's the glue?
It's complex, obviously, but I think it's a shared civic and cultural grammar. The Constitution provides the formal legal framework, sure, but then you have elections, the democratic process itself, however messy. You have cinema, Bollywood, Tollywood, Collywood. You have cricket. You have competitive markets, shared economic spaces, and ancient pilgrimage routes that crisscross the land. All these function as common ground, ways of interacting and sharing space. Pluralism isn't really a new policy. It feels like the default setting of the civilization, ingrained through millennia of adaptation and interaction.
And why the incredible continuity? Most ancient civilizations and empires fade, but the idea of India, however contested, endures.
Geography plays a part, certainly the Himalayas, the oceans. But the real power, I think, lies in those resilient, flexible networks we talked about, like the merchant guilds, adaptable social structures, and incredibly powerful narrative traditions, the epics, that can be endlessly reinterpreted to fit new contexts. It's perhaps that unique ability to achieve synthesis across eras, blending Vedic depth, the heterodoxy of Buddhism and Jainism, Shramana traditions, medieval Bhakti and Sufi dialogues, and modern democratic principles. It seemed to be an ability to argue, then assimilate.
India's story isn't a straight line, is it? It's more like a braid many strands tightly woven into one rope.
That's a great way to put it. From Harappa's precise stone seals to ISRO's modern space probes, the through line is constant reinvention and adaptation. We've seen that India's resilience often lies in its deep-rooted tradition of debate and pluralism. The ability to hold multiple truths, sometimes conflicting truths, whether different origin stories or opposing political viewpoints, and still somehow move forward as a unified democratic state.
So, a final thought for you, our listener. Consider what modern democracies, often wrestling with division and identity politics, might learn from this ancient and ongoing history of intellectual assimilation and pragmatic flexibility. Jai Hind, and stay curious.